In November 2024, I found out I have cancer. Hands down, the most common response from my, quote, friends has been to offer unsolicited medical advice. For some, the cure is a special diet. For others, it might be no food at all, fasting. I can't tell you how many people have recommended ivermectin. Which is why I couldn't help but chuckle a little when I was reading the book of Job today. I read the verse Job 13:4, which in the Hebrew it reads like Job is telling his friends that they are doctors who apply an ointment of lies. They're snake oil salesmen. Of course, Job means it figuratively, but in my case, it's literal. And regardless, the motives of Job's friends and the motives of my friends are the same. It's easier to come up with an explanation and a pretend solution than it is to admit to ourselves that we're powerless. It's easier to say, oh, that person sinned and that's why they're in this terrible situation, than it is to say, but for the grace of God, there go I. It is easier to pretend like we got it all under control than it is to admit that we're terrified in the presence of an almighty God. Because, let's be honest, God is terrifying. Life is terrifying. Is there anything you love and care about? There's no promise that that thing will not be taken from you. In fact, the only thing that God promises will not be taken from us is his love. And it turns out that's all we need. It's true. There's no guarantee from God that bad things will not happen to you. In fact, you can be quite certain they will. But Jesus does promise that you will live the most meaningful, the most fulfilling, the fullest life possible, as he calls it in John 10:10, abundant life. Even if bad things happen to you, Jesus promises that this is possible. In fact, the science of happiness tells us that the happiest people are not those who haven't had bad things happen to them. The happiest people are the people who are happy in spite of the bad things that have happened to them. What we've learned is that these people are able to take the tragic moments in their lives and make them a part of their story, part of their narrative identity. They're able to become whole in spite of the tragedies that have happened to them. That's what the science of happiness tells us. But isn't that also what Jesus is saying? Jesus doesn't promise that bad things won't happen to us. In fact, he says, take up your cross and follow me. But he does promise that we will have the fullest and most abundant life possible if we follow him. And he doesn't just tell us this. He exemplifies it, right? He goes to the cross. He doesn't want to. The night before he goes to the cross in the Garden of Gethsemane, he's like, God, do I really have to do this? But he does it, and he suffers a traumatic break in his relationship with God the Father. This is the worst possible thing that could happen to Jesus. But then 3 days later, on Easter morning, the relationship is miraculously restored. Jesus is risen from the dead. Did he suffer? Yes. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Now, for some of you, this isn't exactly great news. If you're like Job's friends, if you're like some of my friends who are trying really hard to believe that they're in control of reality, that they're smarter than cancer or coronavirus or whatever it is, if you're trying to maintain the lie to yourself that you're in control, the story of Job and the story of Jesus and the cross are not necessarily good news. But I have a feeling that I'm not the only one who has experienced bad things. Some of you have suffered tragic loss. Your life destroyed, your loved ones taken from you. You know how Job feels. And maybe you're still hurting. Maybe you're still broken. Maybe you still haven't been made whole. Well, this is wonderful news for you. Because we don't worship a God who's unfamiliar with suffering, unfamiliar with loss, unfamiliar with trauma. We worship Jesus, the crucified God. He knows your pain. He knows your loss. He knows your trauma. And unlike Job's friends, he's not going to offer explanations or easy solutions. But he is able and he is willing to make you whole. He's able and willing to restore you. He's able and willing to heal you. And right now he's inviting you to take his hand, to walk from the cross to the empty grave, to move forward from your place of brokenness, to join him in resurrected living, to be restored, made whole, to live the most joyful and abundant life possible.